Hello everyone. So today in this video I am going to talk about one of the famous libraries for animation, react-native-reanimated and react-native-gesture-handler. So basically what I am trying to do is I am trying to create a floating view. So basically, as you can see on my screen, when I drag this button I can drag it anywhere on the screen, right? And on click, let's say I am opening a alert dialog. So how we can achieve this using the animation, react native reanimation and the gesture handler. So that will be our point of the video. So without wasting any time, let's get going. So as you can see, I have created a basic UI component. I have created a header and I have created a normal view, and inside that view I have a button component, a floating button component. So if you press on that button, the alert dialog will be shown. Okay, so if I go inside this floating button component, is basically a view, and inside that view I have a touchable opacity, and on the press of that opacity I will be showing an alert dialog. Pretty simple, is it? Okay, so basically to implement this floating view, so basically what I want to say, we need two libraries as we discussed. So one library will be the React Native gesture handler. So what is the use of this library? So gesture handler basically detects what is the current position of our gesture. So basically when I try to drag this button on this try to drag this button down, so gesture will track what is the current X position of that gesture and what is the current Y position of the gesture. So that way will be the use case here for the gesture handler library, and then we pass that value, the X and Y value, to our animated library, React Native reanimated library, so it can so that it can animate the view. So basically when I drag this, let's say to here to here, so our gesture handler will report that this is the current X position and it is moving in the X direction something like this, and in the Y direction something like this. So with using that particular position, we tell the React Native reanimated library to animate in that particular direction. So for that we need to do few things. First of all, it is a simple view. We have to wrap it using the animated view from the React Native reanimated. Let's just import it as well. Import animated from React Native reanimated, and we have to just pass it animated.view. Okay, and one more thing that we have to do for the gesture, we have to import gesture handler and gesture and gesture detector. So we will import gesture and gesture detector from React Native gesture handler, and we have to wrap this whole animated view with a gesture detector. Okay, right, and it's throwing me an error. Basically it expects gesture prop. So for now, let's say I just pass it gesture.pan. okay, just for now. Okay, I think my emulator is quite slow. Let's reload it. Let's open it. Yeah. So this is the required setup. Gesture detector shall always be on the top of the animated view so that we can detect the gesture. Now what we have to define? We have to define some kind of variable where we can store the positions, right? What is the current position of this view or something like that. So I will be creating first of all translate X. So this will be the variable which will be responsible for animating the particular view in x direction. So basically it will keep track of the current it will keep track of the x position on the view. So I can say use shared value to be 0, and use shared value is nothing, it's something like it passes the information from JavaScript thread to the UI thread. So basically it shares the information, it acts like a bridge between JavaScript thread and the UI thread. Okay, and translate y to be same 0. Okay, now I want one more thing, start x to be 0 and start y to be 0. So start x and start y is something like what is the initial position from where this animation will start. So basically what I am telling is what is the initial position, what is the initial position from where this animation started. So basically when I try to drag it from here, so basically this particular position, the particular x and y of this particular position will be our start x and start y, right? So currently I am setting it as 0. And now to animate, what we can do, we can say constant pan gesture to be gesture dot pan, right? And now here we will define two functions. One is on start. So basically this will tell when the gesture starts, what we want to do when the gesture starts. So what will happen when I try to drag it, what will happen. So that is our on start function. Next is our on update function. On update function is when the gesture is updated, when I try to move it, what should happen. Okay, when the gesture is moving, so I'm trying to, when I'm moving this. Okay, so currently we only need these two functions only, and let's say on start accepts a callback function, and I will say in that function I will say start x dot value to be translate x dot value. So what I am telling is that the initial position I will set it as the current x position of the view, which is currently this both initially it is both are basically same, but as you can as we animate it, you can see this translate x dot value will keep changing, right? So let's say when I animate this floating button from here to here, the translate x value, it will move something like from 0 to 100. So in that, so when I start the animation from this position, this particular position, the start x will be 100, right? Because it will be the current x position of the view. Similarly, we can define it for the start y dot value to be translate y dot value. So this is our initial on start function. Now what we want to do on the on update. So basically when I am moving my finger, what do you want to do? So I want to update the x position. And what is our x position? It is stored where? It is stored in the translate x. So what I can do is I can update the translate x dot value, and I can say it to be start x dot value. I have the start initial position, right? And this event particular, I have a something called translate x. So basically this particular thing says how much we are dragging in the x direction. So basically I want to set the current x position to be initial starting position plus how much it is currently dragged in the x direction, right? And similarly I can do it for the y coordinate. Okay, that's it. And now I can replace this gesture.pan that I have defined here to this pan gesture. Okay, now as you can see currently it's not moving. And what is the case? Because we because the animated library is not in the action, right? We are only handling the gesture currently. Only our start X and start Y and translate X and translate Y are updated. But how do we tell it to the UI that this will be our current position? So what we can do, we can use a function. I can define a style for animated style. So basically there is a hook provided by React Native Reanimated, use animated style, this one. Okay, so in this particular style I can pass the style of the view. Basically I can pass the style that I want to update. So what do we want to update? So we want to update our X position. So what is that we can use? So we can use transform property, right? So I can say transform, and transform accepts an array. So I can say the translate X to be translate X dot value, and similarly and it will be an object, and similarly I can say translate Y to be translate Y dot value, and we can now pass this animated style to this animated view. So this particular root is only position equal to absolute, and I can pass it here animated style. So it will by default handle it. It sees that I have provided a particular style. So reanimated will try to use this property, and now if we try to animate, so when I try to drag this particular start X position is updated with the current X position, and when I try to drag it, this translate X dot value is updated with the initial position, let's say 10, and then how much it is dragged in the X direction, and similarly how much it is dragged in the Y direction. So that is our floating button, or you can say any floating view that you can implement. So now one thing that we have to keep in mind, like currently as you can see that when I drag it to the left towards the edge, it goes out of the view, right? So this is something that we need to handle, right? Basically this is not an expected behavior, right? It is going above the header. So for that we can another function is provided, that is on end. So what do we want to do when the animation ends? So basically this is a simple, we have to just check our edge cases here. So I will just check if translate X, I can just check if it should not go towards the left, it should not go out of the view towards the left. So what I can say, if it is less than 0, I will simply set it as 10. So now if you run it, if you try to move towards the left, it will go back to 10 towards the x coordinate of 10. So basically the X position will be by default set to 10 when I go beyond this left edge, right? So similarly we have to implement it for the right side also. So it particularly depends on your business use case, like how you want to do it, what will the value, it will decided by your use case also. So but one thing I can do is I can define something called screen width and screen height. So basically I get it right from the React Native Dimensions library. Screen width and screen height will be screen height, and I will be using dimensions dot get /window. So this will provide me the current width and current height of this device. And what I can do here is, now I can use screen width to dynamically update my. So let's say I do it, let's say 200, and if it goes beyond that value, I want to set it as same. So now if I go beyond this, yep. So as you can see, similarly, when you go beyond the right edge of the screen, it will reposition it to this particular value. Okay, so you can set it dynamically, and similarly we have to handle it for y also, y coordinate also. Translate y dot value is less than 0, so I will set it to 10, and else if screen height minus 100, let's do it 150 for example, or 200 should be fine, right? I will set translate y dot value to be yes. So now if I go towards the top, right, so it does not stay at the header, right? It reposition itself to this particular value. And similarly, if I try to go beyond the bottom of the screen, it repositions itself as well. So that is the use of our on end function. So that's it. Just one thing you have to keep in mind is, like, if you try to use something like gesture detector and animated view simultaneously to animate something on the view, or animate some button or any image, you have to keep sure that the gesture detector, this particular gesture detector, always should be at the top. Otherwise you may see some unexpected behavior in your UI, right? So, and I can also click on this button as well. Yep. So yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you very much.